improve their memory, because memory is critical for success. And what he says is, we want men between 20 and 50, high school and college students can't be used. We want factory workers, city employees, laborers, clerks, telephone, white-collar workers, ordinary people, and he gets them. And so you come down, you see the ad, you say, well, come down. And you come there, and there's you and another guy. You draw straws, and one of you is going to be the teacher, one of you is going to be the learner. This guy's going to be the learner, a genial middle-aged guy, nice guy, friendly guy. Well, you hook him up to a shocking device in the next room, and then you're the teacher, and you're going to give him stuff to learn. When he gets it right, you reward him. When he gets it wrong, you're going to shock him. And in front of you is a very impressive shock generator with 30 switches. The first switch is 15 volts. When you press it, nothing happens. He doesn't say anything. And each successive increment is by 15 volts, 15, 30, 45. At first, he's doing fine. He begins to dumb down. He's making mistakes, and you're shocking more and more. There's a point at which he begins to yell, hey, wait, this hurts. I didn't expect it to be this bad. And you shock him more. And finally, the guy's screaming. And you're a good person. You turn to the experiment and say, sir, who'll be responsible if something happens to him? The experiment says, teacher, keep going. I will be responsible. And you keep going. And then he's screaming, I got a heart condition, I don't want to go on, this is ridiculous. And you keep dissenting. You keep saying, I don't want to do this, I want to leave. And the experiment says, you got a contract. Go on. And then you get to 330 volts. You press the button, the guy screams, there's a thud and silence. What do? You say, sir, there's something wrong. Somebody got to go and check. The experiment says, I'm sorry, you don't understand the rules. The rules say failure to respond is an error of omission, which is equal to an error of commission. You must continue to shock. Who would do it? If you step back right now, imagine you're in that study. How could you be helping improve his memory if he's unconscious or worse, dead? You can't. So at that point, everybody should quit. It doesn't make sense for anybody to go on. But the shock generator keeps going up to 450 volts. And in fact, when it gets to 375, it says danger severe shock. When it gets to the last two levels, XXX, the pornography of power. And so the question is, who would go all the way? Who of those 1,000 ordinary American citizens in little towns in Connecticut would go all the way? Milgram asked 40 psychiatrists at the Yale Medical School individually. He described the study, said, what percent of all American citizens would go to 450 volts? Their answer was 1%. Only sadists would engage in sadistic behavior. Okay? So they're saying it's sadistic behavior, only sadists would do this. So what's wrong with that analysis? It's a total dispositional analysis. They have ignored the power of the situation. The lab coat, the role-playing teacher-learner, the physical setup, the phony rules, the ideology, we want to help people improve their memory. They ignored all of the situational variables and said, if it's bad things, only bad people would do it. But in any event, that's our base rate, 1%. So anything more than 1% should be significant. So here's the data. This is the number of people who drop out on the left-hand axis. And what you see is nobody drops out before 285 volts. The guy's been screaming all along. And at that point, 5 people drop out. When he gets to 330, 2 people drop out, 5 people drop out. It's not 1%. Look at it. It's 65% go all the way to the end. 2 out of 3. Not 1%, 65%. Now, this is only one study. I said he ran 1,000 subjects. He didn't do it. So in his other studies, and he did 16, each one he varied one aspect of the social situation. And what he shows, Milgram is really quantifying evil as the percentage of people who would give 450 volts. In study 16, more than 90% go all the way, 9 out of 10. That's almost everybody. What is study 16? If you go in and you're waiting for the experiment to begin, and you see somebody like you go all the way, he's a Confederate obviously, you go all the way. In study 5, if you see 2 peers rebel, 90% of the time you rebel. That means we present a powerful social model for other people. If you defy unjust authority, other people are likely to follow. If you obey unjust authority, people are likely to follow. What about women? In study 13, no different than men, 2/3. And so what he shows is, it's as if he's putting a dial on human nature, that you can make people resilient, defying authority, or almost totally obedient by changing one aspect of the social situation. Now, of course, in these studies, nobody is being shocked. But it's so believable that almost all the subjects believe that. But all research is artificial. So you always want to say, what is the real-world parallel? What's the external validity of the study? Sadly, back in 1978, 912 American citizens committed suicide or were murdered by their family and friends in the jungles of Guyana because they followed blindly, they were blindly obedient to this man who was a Protestant minister from the Church of Christ's Disciples, Jim Jones. His church was called People's Temple. It existed in San Francisco and Los Angeles, and I counseled some of the people who escaped from that. So this is the modern Lucifer. He's a man of God who became the angel of death. And if you go online and you put in Jonestown last hour, you can read his script and you can even hear it, because he audio taped everything he did, and so we have that last hour to find out what did he say to convince these people to commit suicide. Well, about the time Milgram is doing his work, I'm reading Lord of the Flies with my students. And if you remember that story, if you haven't, it's a wonderful story, and there's a couple of movies based on it. It's really about the power of anonymity to change people's behavior. A group of choir boys are escaping a nuclear war in Europe, and the plane crashes mysteriously on a desert island. There's only boys, no adults, no girls. So it's Adam, mythically Adam given another chance in paradise. And at first, democracy takes over, big kids protect little kids, until food runs out. Now the only food on the island are wild pigs. And a group of boys traps a pig, they're about to kill it, but they can't kill because thou shalt not kill is a commandment. Oh, by the way, these are choir boys, British choir boys. What Golding does, the author, he has one of the boys take his clothes off, paint himself, get some of the other boys to do it, and now that they are anonymous, they not only can kill the pig, they enjoy killing. Then they kill Piggy the intellectual boy, and in the story, fascism takes over. Might rules over right. So my student said, is that valid? Simply changing your external appearance changes your values. So I said, I don't know, let's do a study. So the study simply, we had students from my introductory class at NYU come in. My assistant says, you're in a study where you're going to meet two women who are trying to be creative under stress. Their job is to be creative, your job is to stress them. But we don't want you to give off nonverbal cues. So we're going to put you in hoods and big floppy lab coats. And there were 4 groups of 10 girls each. And you first listen to the 2 victims you're going to meet in a minute. And then we bring them in the next room, we give them each a sample of the shock. We take away their name, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, they're in the dark, they're in hoods. We call this de-individuation. We have taken away their individuality. And again, when somebody tells you about research, you want to know compared to what? Compared to students who are randomly assigned to the condition of being individuated. We give them name tags which highlight their names, but everything else is the same. So we want to compare how do girls who are anonymous versus girls who are individuated deal with a situation in which they see 2 women like them behind a one-way screen with me. I'm reading off words and they have to come up with creative solutions. When an amber light goes on, they put their finger on the button. When the green light goes on, they're shocking the system, and she is jumping and twisting and moaning. And they have 20 trials to shock her, or believe they were shocking her. And then she goes out and a second victim comes in and there's 20 more trials. And so the question is, who would shock her? It doesn't make a difference if you're anonymous or not. The data very simply are, this is the first 10 trials, this is the second 10 trials, and I've combined the 2 different victims for ease of presentation. So in the individuated condition, they start low and they stay low, simply making women feel anonymous. In a situation we're going to shock other women, they start off twice as high, and over time, they shock more and more. This is a significant linear increase. Because once they begin to shock, it's as if she were their puppet. They're pressing the button, and she's twisting and turning and moaning, and they do it more and more and more over time. So here the measure is shock duration. In the Milgram study, it's shock intensity. And so we know anonymity, the anonymity of the terrorist. And we know America's first terrorists were Ku Klux Klan. And sadly, here's a little girl being socialized into using anonymity as a way of instilling terror, mostly among black people in the South. An anthropologist read about this research I did and said, does it make a difference if warriors go to battle in changing their appearance or not? What do you mean make a difference? Make a difference in how they treat their victims. And so what he said is, we know in some cultures warriors go to battle without changing their appearance. In others they go to battle changing their appearance, as in the Lord of the Flies, painting themselves. In still others they wear a mask. In still others they wear uniforms. It's the anonymity of the uniform versus the mask versus makeup. And what he did is he found 23 cultures in which there were 2 bits of data. One bit of data is, do warriors change their appearance or not? And he found the 15 cultures, they change their appearance, 8 not. And his measure was not pressing a button. The measure was, do they kill, torture, or mutilate their victims? It's the most extreme outcome measure in any study that I know of. And what he finds is, if they don't change their appearance, only 1 of 13 cultures kill, torture, mutilate. But we're interested in the red zone. What happens if they change their appearance? 12 of 13, that's 90%. Kill, torture, mutilate. So if you only know one thing, do warriors go to battle without changing their appearance as they do normally, or do they change their appearance? You can predict that in the vast majority of cases, 90%, they're going to do terrible things to their victims. So this tells us culture has wisdom. If you want young men to kill other young men in a battle, if old men want to have young men kill other young men in a battle, then it's important to change their appearance, to take away their individuality. But when the war is over, it is against the law to continue to wear a uniform, because we want you to go back to being pacifist, back to not being violent. I hope you were surprised at this image. This is a soldier on duty in Abu Ghraib, Tier 1A night shift. Some of you who are rock and roll aficionados will know this is the face paint of the Detroit rock group called Insane Clown Posse. They promote violence, misogyny, violence against women. Imagine you're on duty and you feel secure enough to have a Harley-Davidson cap on, no uniform, and that face mask. That means you know there's no military discipline there. That means you know no senior officer is ever going to come down. If a senior officer comes down, he's not going to reprimand you. Also, imagine you are a prisoner in that prison, and one of your guards is walking around looking like that. Would that scare you? It scares me. But it's also one of the messages that General Taguba's report raises. There was a total absence of military discipline. These abuses never happen. We have military discipline, and we have clear oversight. So this leads us to the Stanford prison experiment. I didn't have Milgram's money. I just put a little ad in the paper. And the ad said, we want college students for a study of prison life. We did it at the end of summer school at Stanford and at Cal. So the students in the experiment were from all over the United States and Canada. It was done at Stanford, but these were not Stanford students. I think only 2 were. So 75 kids answered the ad. We gave them a battery of personality tests. We gave them clinical interviews. And we picked 24, the most normal, most healthy, and then we flipped a coin. You be a guard, you be a prisoner, you be a guard. The kids who were going to be guards, we had come down the night before. We brought them to Army and Navy store. They all got military uniforms, symbols of power, as you'll see. The prisoners, we said, wait at home or wait in the dormitories. The study will begin on Sunday.
Prisoner 819 did a bad thing. Prisoner 819 did a bad thing. Prisoner 819 did a bad thing.